Hello, and welcome to the University of Michigan School of Information live Q&A on our new Masters of Applied Data Science degree online program here at the University of Michigan School of Information. I'm Amy Humkus-Hayes, Assistant Director of Academic Program Development and member of the MADS team. We're here in my office again answering your questions live as we prepare for our priority April 1st, 2019 application deadline. And like last time, I have my esteemed colleague here joining me, who I'll let introduce herself.
Hi everyone, my name is Rachel Weiner. I'm the Assistant Director for Recruitment and Admissions here at the School of Information, and we are very, very excited about this new online Master of Applied Data Science program and happy to be here to answer all of your questions.
So we're going to spend about an hour of time together today, and before we get to our live Q&A, Rachel and I are going to talk a little bit more about the MADS application and the MADS program. I will have my cell phone with me. I promise you it's not because I'm in fact using social media, but rather so I can get your questions and answers fed to me through another one of our MADS team members who you can't see. Her name's Lauren, but I can see very well, who's right over here. So please do chat us your questions in the YouTube live event because we're happy to answer them. But otherwise, I'm going to go ahead and let Rachel get started talking about the application since our application deadline is so near.
It is. So Monday, April 1st at 11:59 Eastern Standard Time is the priority deadline for the fall 2019 entrance. And so what that means is for you, as you're preparing or continuing to finalize your materials, you'll want to be submitting by that deadline to be considered for the priority consideration of both admission and scholarships. And so we'll talk a little bit about both of those things, but to start, I just wanted to reiterate all of the pieces and components of the application that you're likely looking at right now and working on or preparing to work on. So the application itself has a variety of different demographic information for you to be filling out and letting us know a little bit more about you and your history. We also have your resume, which does a similar thing in that it helps to highlight the different areas of your background, whether that's professional, academic, and we also love to see things that you might be involved in outside of professional and academia. So things like other affiliations, anything community groups that you're a participant with, other sorts of activities or leadership and ways that you sort of are a whole person. That's really what we're all about in our holistic review process. So your resume might reflect that. There are also transcripts that you can be submitting. Those can be unofficial transcripts. So often those are easier to get and upload quickly. So for the review process, we can accept those. And those transcripts would be from any degree seeking or any institution where you received or will receive a degree. If you have other transcripts, which could be, let's say, transcripts you might have taken a couple of continuing education courses or courses at a community college or elsewhere, and you have those transcripts and they don't have necessarily a degree conferred, you can still upload those as part of your whole story and the pieces of your academic performance and indicators that you might have. You are welcome to upload those as well. And then for things, we get this question often too, where it's sort of academically focused, so it might be a certificate program or some type of other online or otherwise piece of your academic history that isn't a quote-unquote transcript. You can also be uploading those too. So essentially anything that reflects what a transcript would, which is grades and or certification, we can be reviewing that as part of your application if you have them. We also have a few different essays. So there are short essay prompts. There are 5 of those, 250 words or less, that allow you to sort of flesh out your ideas about what is applied data science, what are your interests as it relates to that, and what are your interests here at the School of Information. And then your personal statement, which is about 1 page or less, is submitted, and that prompt is really allowing you to kind of explore a little bit and let us know as a review committee more about who you are and what motivates you and drives you to pursue this master's degree at this time. We have letters of recommendation, of which we require 3. And those can be submitted right directly into the application. You are able to list out your 3 recommenders, their names and email addresses, and the system takes care of the rest for you and allows you to manage the receipt of those. So you are able to see when your recommender has started their letter and submitted their letter, so you can help to kind of manage that process. And you can see real time when they have been submitted and received by us. And then there is a TOEFL, an English language proficiency requirement for those who are non-native English speakers. There are a number of ways that you might be eligible to waive that requirement. Those are detailed in more or in more detail on our website, so you can look at that there. And if you feel that you would meet those requirements, you can go ahead and submit, and the committee during processing will be the ones where we'll determine that eligibility and let you know if anything is different from what you might have expected.
That's wonderful, Rachel. That's a very thorough overview.
It was a lot.
It was a lot, but a lot of good information about how to navigate our process. So as you can imagine, we've gotten several questions from folks who have indicated to us that there may be some confusion about, or they want some clarity about what a complete application means. Mm-hmm. So in an instance, for example, that you have 3 recommenders, names and email addresses, but perhaps don't have 3 letters of recommendation yet, could you still hit that submit button on April 1st, for example?
Absolutely. So we encourage you, in order to be considered for that priority deadline, to have submitted your portion of the application, which would include the resume, transcripts, essays, the application itself. You just hit submit. And then those other pieces, so be it a letter of recommendation that still hasn't come in yet, or perhaps a TOEFL score that needs to kind of be sent to us still, as long as that comes within the first week or so, we will still be able to accept you as an applicant for that priority deadline. So you will still want to be hitting submit on your portion by April 1st.
That's great to hear. So another question that often comes up, Rachel, is what it means when we say holistic application review. Mm-hmm. So you did a really lovely job of indicating to our applicants the combination of factors that we review when making application decisions. Mm-hmm. Can you tell us a little bit more at a conceptual level what it means to engage in a holistic review process?
Absolutely. So here at the School of Information broadly, we really do value the interdisciplinary and the whole person that someone is when they're entering any degree program. And so all of the components we have really thoughtfully crafted as a piece of this application, because we believe it allows you to demonstrate who you are as a whole person, and then for us to be able to better assess that. And so all of those pieces, there is no single one that is weighted more than another. We do want to consider all of those pieces and all of those pieces in context. And so what I mean, I like to give the example of a transcript. Oftentimes people think, oh, my GPA is X. What does that look like? Well, GPA is one indicator, right? And so the GPA is one piece of the context and of the holistic process. What we'll also be looking at, and why those transcripts are important, is we can look at, are there patterns? Are there particular courses where you might have done better or differently based on what might be an indicator of your success for this program? Oftentimes people have very different academic journeys and educational journeys and paths, and so we want to appreciate and recognize that that might come in a variety of ways. And so each sort of assessment of academic potential could come from those transcripts. It could come from any academic letter of recommendation writers. It could come from, as I mentioned, other courses where you have self-selected to pursue and kind of dig deeper in a particular area. And so oftentimes it's a way for you to kind of demonstrate who you are as a whole and for us to see that.
That's wonderful. And according to what I've heard, you having worked in the School of Information, of course, longer than me, is that we get an applicant pool, and our student body is really representative of folks that have really technical backgrounds and thrive in our environment, and not technical backgrounds and thrive in our environment. Can you talk a little bit more about who makes up our students?
Absolutely. So the School of Information, both students and staff, but really also our faculty that you might have seen if you've been looking on our faculty profiles, we are highly interdisciplinary. We come from a variety of different areas, disciplines, professional degrees, and really kind of make up this nice area where we are able to approach this work and approach it from this applied data science, in this case, applied data analytics lens, and kind of look at that through a variety of different spaces. And so you'll see reflected, as I mentioned, in our faculty, but also in the students, that folks, exactly as you said, are coming from all different types of backgrounds. We say we have over 100 majors represented in our residential programs, and so we expect that there will be some variation and variety in the applicants we see for this degree as well.
That's fantastic. Now, one of the things that you mentioned is that when someone submits an application, they are submitting an application both for admissions and for scholarships. One of the questions that our applicants ask is whether or not international applicants qualify for scholarships. Can you speak to that?
Yeah, great question. So yes, you would be considered for that priority consideration for admission and scholarship, and all applications are going to be reviewed for those criteria, so for both admission and scholarship. And what that means is you do not have to submit any additional materials or application to be considered for scholarship. We are reviewing it based on the materials you have already submitted. And international applicants are eligible for all different types of funding, and they are going to range from partial to full tuition. And so not only are international applicants eligible, but also our part-time applicants would be eligible, which is unique. And so it's something that we are excited to be able to have that opportunity to really assess the entire pool and not have to eliminate anyone from consideration for those funds.
That's wonderful. So since we're talking about finances and fees, another question that was posed was around the cost of applying.
Yes.
So can you talk to us a little bit about what application fee structure we have in place and why?
We do, yes. So we have our application fees, which is once you are ready to submit, you would be doing that, you would be completing that payment. It is slightly different for an in-state or a domestic applicant from an international applicant. But there are several ways, and we've had several students who reach out to us who you might be eligible for an application fee waiver. There's a lot of different pieces listed on our website, whether that's an affiliation that you might have with a particular organization that could allow you to waive that application fee.
That's wonderful. So if in fact you got a degree in English and it states that somewhere on the transcript, do you have to also include that information somewhere else in the application?
I see. So you mean that the language of instruction was English?
Right. Yep.
Yeah. So if your transcript states that the sole language of instruction at your institution was English, you do not have to provide additional documentation. That is exactly what our team is here to do when we begin processing. And so you don't have to submit an additional piece of documentation. You don't have to submit any sort of waiver or piece of paper waiver. The waiver comes in on our end when we are able to waive that for you. And if you feel that you are eligible for a TOEFL waiver in this case, then you are absolutely able to submit. And if anything is different, our team will let you know.
That's great. And relatedly, if you are participating currently or have in a program that is totally in English, or that is where the instruction is in English, does that in fact qualify you then to submit a TOEFL waiver, or do you still have to take the TOEFL? What do we generally use as principles for deciding that English language requirement?
Yeah, so if you are going to have completed or have already completed any degree, so that could be your undergraduate or a different master's degree program that was taught solely in English, you don't have to submit anything else. As long as we can see that, maybe it's on a transcript. We also have a database that tells us which institutions are taught in English. So we do that processing. You don't have to submit you do not have to submit your TOEFL score.
That's great. So relatedly, since we're talking about programs both in the United States and abroad, if in fact we have applicants that have grade point averages or were given grades in other countries where they don't use a standard 4.0 GPA scale, for example, what do they do about that?
Yes, so you can submit your transcripts as they are. We do not accept any WES evaluations, and so you just submit your transcript as long as it has both a translated version to English. You can also submit the original document if you'd like, but we absolutely do need the English translated version. And from there, we actually recalculate the GPAs to better fit a 4.0 GPA scale and kind of really emphasize and increase the equity that we can have with our applicant pool so that all students are being reviewed based on the same score and GPA there.
That's great to hear. So another question that we have about our application process is the use of the term priority deadline. So I'm assuming that lots of the folks that are joining us today have likely heard us talk about that a lot, both in our live Q&As and in addition to the emails that they get. And so someone is wondering if that has an impact on things like admission and scholarship. So in other words, why do we set a priority deadline?
Yeah.
What's the point of us using that language?
So it allows for you all to really get your decisions sooner, right? So we are hoping to have decisions released between 5 to 7 weeks after you've submitted your application. And so for that reason, that priority deadline allows for you to find out sooner. It allows for those scholarship considerations to be made sooner. And so we say that with the priority deadline for scholarships, when you're considered in that first round consideration, as you can imagine, we have more opportunities to offer more in that first priority deadline. And then from there, as I said, all will be reviewed, but it might be with a little bit less ability to offer scholarship consideration after that after the April 1st.
Great, thank you. So relatedly, when talking about application materials and how to prepare a strong application, we have both a statement of purpose questions and we have the opportunity for folks to submit a personal statement.
Correct.
As you can imagine, there can be some confusion about what's the difference between these two things.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about what we might look for in a personal statement that is distinct from what we look for in answers to our statement of purpose questions?
Absolutely. So I like to think of the statement of purpose as a little bit more of your academic statement of purpose. And so the questions are meant to kind of elicit more of that response around what are your academic interests and sort of drive as it relates to pursuing this field, this degree, ultimately as a professional degree, what you hope to do with that. And so I really think of those prompts as allowing you to demonstrate your academic statement of interest. And then the personal statement really kind of allows you that extra or additional space to say a little bit more about who you are as a learner and as a person who wants to go into the professional field and pursue this graduate degree. So I can see where, sometimes if you're writing it and you're trying to kind of tease that apart, it's okay if it's a little bit similar. Sometimes what is about us as a person and what drives us is what relates to our interest in the field. And that's perfectly okay too. It really is those two opportunities, but if you start to see them kind of coming together in a way, that's also okay. So just know that those 5 prompts are really meant to be more of your academic statement of interest. You have your personal statement. And then there's an additional information section for anything that doesn't seem to fit within either of those 2 areas.
That's wonderful. Thank you. So we've talked extensively about the admissions process, and one of the things that we haven't delved into in as much depth is around our assessments.
Yes.
So for example, we do have someone asking if there's an entrance exam, and I'm hoping that you can clarify for us what, if any, qualifications for exams are part of the admissions process, and then I can talk a little bit more about the assessments that we will offer once someone is conditionally admitted.
Great. So that was the key word that you just used, conditionally admitted. So after that April 1st deadline, once we've processed, reviewed, and you've received a decision, for those of you who are admitted, you will be conditionally admitted. And what that means is it is our way of saying we have found really strong, we've seen you demonstrate strengths within your application. We're excited about what you would bring to this program, to the field. And from there, we have these assessments, as Amy mentioned, that you would be required to take after the fact. And so we have a little bit of a timeline that I think you can maybe give a little bit more information on, but that would be after you would receive your admission, you would be able to take these assessments to then be admitted ultimately for the fall.
And my understanding is correct, Rachel, that we don't require anyone to take any test before they've been conditionally admitted. So for example, our program doesn't require the GRE.
Correct. No GRE, no other sort of standardized or otherwise tests. Aside from, I guess, the TOEFL as the English language proficiency, but no other sort of other standardized GRE or certificates or different online courses are required prior to the application.
That's great. So speaking of our assessments, once you are conditionally admitted, our goal is to include in your conditional admittance a link to those assessments. And they are a combination of three things, two of which are Python assessments, one that's a programming component where you'll actually program in Python, and the other where we're assessing your knowledge of Python. And then the second, a statistics assessment, which is roughly the equivalent to a basic or an introductory statistics course. So once someone's conditionally admitted, they get access to those assessments, and then they participate in those assessments, and if they pass, in fact, that admittance moves from conditional to full admittance. So some of the questions that we've received are around the nature of those assessments. So both, what do they entail? How long will we have to take them? Mm-hmm. So the good news is that once you get links to those assessments, you will have the opportunity to pick within a specific time frame of a few weeks or more to take the assessment. So the objective is not that everyone that's conditionally admitted take them exactly at the same time, for example, but rather you'll have some opportunity to choose a time that works well for you. The assessments, or at least components of, some will be proctored, so there will also be a component of scheduling proctoring time, and that's something that you'll be able to do right through Coursera, where the assessments will be hosted. The good news is that we also are giving students an opportunity, or applicants an opportunity, to prepare for those assessments in a number of ways. So one way is that when you get access to those course shells where the assessments will live, you will also get access to a practice assessment for Python and a practice assessment for statistics. So before you schedule your proctored assessment time and you take the actual test, you will have an opportunity to take a practice test on the Coursera platform. So you are able to not only ascertain the kinds of questions that we're asking and the level of difficulty, but you'll also be able to get more comfortable with the platform itself. We also have a couple of additional ways for you to prepare for those assessments. One is we have a number of sample questions that are available publicly on our website. So if you're curious, how does the MATS program assess introductory statistics knowledge, for example? You can access those questions so you can get a flavor for the kinds of questions and the question types that we'll be using. Another way that you can prepare, in an instance where you feel like, wow, I took a Python class, but it's been several years, or I took a statistics course in undergrad and now I've been working for 5 to 7 years and I have to freshen up a little bit. My statistics knowledge has gotten a little, a little weak, which would certainly be the case that I would be in, for example. We have options for you to participate in massive online open courses through Coursera. One of our MOOCs through the University of Michigan is actually a statistics course in Python. Mm-hmm. So that's a wonderful opportunity for you to brush up on your Python, your statistics knowledge. Another, for example, is a series of Python MOOCs. So in an instance where you're saying, well, most of my programming experience is in C#, but I understand how to program well, so I just want to get a sense of, I want to get used to the Python libraries. That would give you an opportunity to do so. I do want to be clear, though, that the MOOCs that are in Coursera that are often promoted when we promote the degree are distinct opportunities that have no bearing on your admission to the program.
Correct.
So if you take those MOOCs because you want to brush up on your knowledge or you want to prepare for the program, that's a great thing. We encourage you to do that, but we do want to be really clear that that has no bearing on your admission to the program. So if, for example, you felt like, I know Python, I feel good about it, I know statistics, I feel good about it, I don't need to take anything to brush up or to prepare, that's okay too. You don't have to. The assessments themselves that are part of the degree program are not yet available because we haven't, of course, started to conditionally admit folks. Right. So only folks that are conditionally admitted to our program will have access to those assessments. Mm-hmm. They're not publicly available. They're not massive online open courses. They're really small private online communities that would only be available to that very specific pool of folks. So I certainly hope that that clears up any confusion about the two, because we've gotten some feedback that it is a bit confusing. Yeah. And if not, please do ping us so we can further explain the differences. But my sincere hope is that people walk away from this knowing that there are lots of different ways that they can prepare for the assessments, some of which would include participating in a MOOC, some of which may not, but just getting access to the question types. Certainly there will be practice opportunities if you get invited to participate in the assessments. And then, of course, we will give you a couple of weeks at least to participate in the assessments themselves, so you have an opportunity to pass those and, again, move from conditional admittance to full admittance. What do you think, Rachel, based on what I'm saying? How much sense is that making?
I think it's making sense.
Good.
I think what I'm taking away is that we will support you in getting all of the information that you need to be successful in ultimately coming here in the fall. And so these, as I come to understand it, they are not meant to be a gateway in any way. They are meant to really demonstrate what are the types of skills that are going to help you and allow you to be most successful once you get here.
Right.
And so they're not meant to be true stumpers and, asking these really nuanced questions, because what we're trying to say is here's the baseline knowledge that we would hope you would have to be able to dig deep once you do start the program and continue to grow in that space.
That's exactly right. Yeah, that's very well put. So speaking of admissions, more admissions questions are kind of centered on that theme. We often do hear from folks who are curious if there are other English language assessments that we will take instead of TOEFL. Can you address that for our audience today?
Sure, yes. The TOEFL is preferred, and it's the one we see most often. However, we can accept the IELTS scores as well. You can use the same institution code, it's 1839, to be able to have those sent to us, but that would be the other one you could use.
If you've already submitted an application, can you add additional documents? Or, put another way, when is the last date to submit the application to the program? So two related yet distinct questions.
Got it. Okay. So I would say yes to the first one. You can absolutely send us an email. We are monitoring them. As you can imagine, we're getting a lot right now as the deadline comes closer.
Absolutely.
But we are monitoring that, and we can upload on your behalf any additional addendums or things that you maybe now after hearing us talk, you do want to add something. We can absolutely add that for you. I will say up until the time when your application is fully processed and moved on to review is usually when we would stop allowing for any additional information. Just as you can imagine, once we've started reviewing, we want it to be equitable across that process. So, but absolutely at this point you are able to send any updates or addendums to your application.
And what's that email address again?
Yes, it is umsi.mads, M-A-D-S, at umich.edu.
And that's a great email address to send any specific admission or application.
It's the one. We're all on it, and we're all answering as fast as we can.
Absolutely.
Yes, that's the great email for you.
Now, a distinct yet related question around application submissions and deadlines. Is there a final deadline that has been set yet for the MADS program?
At this point, we don't have a final deadline. I do expect that as soon as we do, you will all be receiving that information as to when that is.
Great, thank you. So, of course, people are wondering, well, how large is this program going to be to start? And generally speaking, it looks like we're anticipating filling a class of about 150 students, give or take. So on the one hand, we have some flexibility because it is an online program. On the other, it's a new program, as we've indicated. And so we're trying to strike a good balance between having a nice, healthy class size and yet not overwhelming anyone. And I'm guessing, Rachel, that feels about right to you too.
Yes.
That's kind of what we're looking for, is to accept about and start with about 150 students. But a little bit of range within there, but more or less. So we've touched on this already about scholarships available to international students, but I do think that there is a lot of interest in and perhaps concern around the kinds of scholarships that international students qualify for.
Absolutely.
So can you just reiterate for us once more what kinds of scholarships or funding opportunities our international applicants can be considered for, or what kinds of financial aid options may be available to them?
Absolutely. And so yes, no one is excluded from scholarship consideration. So that would include part-time applicants, it would include international applicants, domestic applicants. Everyone is being reviewed and is eligible for those funds. I do expect that we will have more partial tuition scholarships, but also some full tuition scholarships. And those, we will make sure that you have all of the information with enough time to make your decision. We recognize that attending any type of continuing education or master's program is an investment. It's an investment of your time, your energy, and financially. And so we recognize that and want to be able to support you in whatever that might look like. And so I also want to say too that scholarships and these half or partial to full tuition funding is one piece of that sort of funding puzzle. And so I want you to know that as soon as those decisions are made, we will also be following up with additional opportunities that you might consider for how you could fund a degree. We've had some folks be successful with certain partnerships or external funding. We have a variety of external funds that are listed on our website that come with, they're all over different eligibility requirements. So some do have different eligibility pieces to them, but you're absolutely more than welcome to take a look. We compile this very long at this point spreadsheet of external scholarships that we've received, either from students who have received them in the past or that get sent to us from our networks. And so we want to encourage you to think kind of broadly about how you can think about funding. And so scholarships is one of those pieces, but we'll let you know more information as soon as that is released.
That's wonderful. So for those applicants who may have applied for another UMSI program, so for example, our master's in information or health informatics, can they, or how much or little, can they move application material, including letters of recommendation, from one to another?
Yes, so if you have applied to another UMSI program, you can send us an email and we can work to ensure that any materials that you would like to share between programs is shareable. So I would say for sure you don't have to send us 2 copies of your transcript or 2 copies of any TOEFL score. So there's certain things that for certain we could absolutely use, and then it would be up to you if there's pieces. I know the essays are different, so I would probably not see someone want to replicate an essay or use that in 2 different spaces. But we can work with you individually to make sure that whatever pieces you want to be used for multiple programs, we can get that for you.
That's excellent. So we've been quite clear that when we start this process, all of our cohort 1 students, or students that start with us in the fall of 2019, will be part-time as we continue to develop and launch the program, but that in steady state we'll likely move to having 3 application cycles a year.
Yes.
My understanding, and I think yours is as well, is that we haven't quite determined yet when that will happen. So we can't say with any certainty that yes, we're going to start the 3 application cycle immediately after we launch in fall 2019. But we can say with certainty that over time, that's what we would expect.
Absolutely. We expect that there would likely be a fall entrance, a winter, so for us, January entrance, and then a spring summer, so probably around May would be the 3 cycles throughout the year. So January, May, September.
Okay, yeah. So once we have that information publicly available, that's certainly something that we would share. So in an instance where someone is saying, I really want to be a math student, I'm not quite ready, I'm hoping to start later than the fall 2019 semester, we would be able to communicate with them once we know when that next application deadline will be.
Absolutely.
Wonderful. So we did talk a little bit about this earlier, but I think in the spirit of being very clear and ensuring that people know and can adequately prepare, there is no GRE or Gmat required, correct?
Correct. There is no standardized test, Gmat, GRE, LSAT, none of them. You do not have to submit them, and we don't actually consider them as part of our holistic review process. So you do not have to take them, nor do you have to submit them in any type of way.
Excellent. So a couple of the questions that we've received are about the nature of the program themselves. So for instance, we've really emphasized the notion that the program is applied and that we are teaching an approach that is end-to-end data science. So from the beginning of how you formulate data problems, how you get the data sets, right, how you conduct good field experiments, for example, all the way through how you communicate results in a compelling way, both to other data scientists as well as, if not equally or more important, to lay folks who in fact don't have a data science background. And so we're really emphasizing that practical and hands-on approach throughout the process, while also letting students know that it's informed by rigorous theory, of course, and computation. So one of the questions that we got was around what will those application opportunities look like, or what will the specializations or electives look like over time in the program? So I can tell you that those are something that we anticipate anticipate building out over time. And so you would see eventually where the program may, for example, have opportunities for students to dig more deeply into concepts like natural language processing if they had a distinct interest in it, or deep learning if they had a distinct interest in it. We would also imagine that students may have an opportunity to participate in courses that focus on specific ways in which we use data. So for example, learning analytics has come up quite a bit, or social media and the use of social media data, for example. But what I can tell our applicants is that even if you are not in a course that offers that opportunity, the good news is that we will also have courses that we're calling project or capstone courses, where you may have the opportunity to pick a specific area of interest and then use data sets that are highly relevant to that area of interest. So for instance, if you were someone that said, I want to move into being a data scientist in marketing. So I really want to understand marketing analytics, marketing behavior, marketing research, and how to use a data science approach to that set of work and that kind of data. We may in fact then have an opportunity for you to be exposed to and use that data in action in one of our learning opportunities. Could be in a class that emphasizes a data project, or it could be in a co-curricular learning opportunity with a real world client, for example, or an internship in a firm that specializes on marketing analytics. So the good news is that we've got lots of opportunities for you to apply your interest in data science in more specific ways. And we're doing that both in the curricular capacity, in the degree, and in the classes itself. And we're thinking about and executing co-curricular opportunities for our students to have that access as well. So another question that came in that's related to the program itself is whether or not the diploma will look different from any residential University of Michigan program. So the answer is no, the diploma will not look any different. So there will be no designation on the diploma, for example, that this was an online degree program. We are emphasizing that yes, the delivery mechanism is different, but the rigor and the faculty who teach the courses and the content is all the same. So we don't distinguish our students who are participating in an online format as being different than our residential students, and that would include, but not limited to, of course, but includes the diploma itself.
And I think that's actually an interesting thing that kind of relates to a question I often get, is that students, these same faculty who teach in our residential program are also teaching in this space.
That's right.
And oftentimes folks are recognizing some of these faculty for their participation or involvement or development of really outstanding MOOCs that we have, and how the University of Michigan School of Information is recognized in that space. And so a question that I get too is, how is this different from the MOOC space, if it has some of these similar faculty, but you're talking here about a diploma versus a certificate is what I'm assuming, but it's a question I get often.
Yeah, no, it's a great question. So as you can imagine, MOOCs do have a wonderful opportunity to help provide education and professional development for folks, and they can get certifications that they can share, for example, on a resume or with an employer. But we want to be really clear that the Master's of Applied Data Science degree program is a degree.
Yes.
And so it is comprehensive in a way that our MOOCs may not be, because it takes an end-to-end data science approach. It is 34 credits, which is a full number of credits that you would get for a master's degree. It is academic credit. So in a MOOC environment, you get a certification, and although useful, it is not a conferred degree. In the MADS program, you get a conferred degree. So you would list, for example, on your resume that you have a master's degree in applied data science. That's another really important difference. The nice thing about the way that we're structuring the MADS curriculum is that the majority of our courses will be 1 credit, 1 month long courses. So we're borrowing some inspiration from the ways in which MOOCs create flexible learning opportunities. So if you're a part-time MADS student and you want to take 1 credit a month because you're working full-time, we can enable you to do that quite easily. Conversely, if you are a student who's working part-time and wants to take up to 3 credits a month, we can also completely accommodate that as well. But the objective is really to use that great flexible approach and a platform, which is Coursera, that's hosting our degree, to enable you to earn your credits for the degree, but at the end to still say, yes, I have a master's degree in applied data science. I understand what it means to do data science from concept and outset through conclusion, and I've really had an opportunity to exercise these deep, rigorous data science skill sets in a number of hands-on and applied ways.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. So, the good news is that if you are in fact familiar with some of our University of Michigan School of Information MOOCs, you will likely see some of those same folks, like Dr. Chuck Severance, for example, who is teaching a couple of our courses, Kevin Collins Thompson, who is familiar in the MOOC space, Chris Brooks. So really wonderful, very qualified, and really well-known data scientists or information professionals who are now going to be providing some of that same great content, but in a degree as opposed to a MOOC. Yeah, it's a wonderful question. So recommendation letters, of course, come up quite a bit, and that makes sense, right? Because we're really using those as part of that holistic review process. So is there a preference for academic letters, employer letters? Are more recent relationships highly valued as compared to older ones?
I see.
Tell us a little bit about how we evaluate letters.
Yeah, so with these and knowing that it is part of the holistic process, we really look to you to have determined those 3 folks who you feel can speak most positively about your interests and skills and experiences as it relates to pursuing this degree. And so for those of you who might be in school, it would be perfectly reasonable to see a mixture of academic or professional, maybe from a professional could be from volunteer, from internship, from a part-time job, or for those of you who've been in industry for some time, I think that you don't need to go knocking on your professor's door from 10 years ago just to get that academic reference. I think it's perfectly fine and really demonstrates that that's the space you're in your career, to have kind of a mixture of maybe some of your professional recommendations coming from that space. So any mixture can work, and I think that it really speaks to sort of the diversity of people that we expect are going to be applying, that could be any combination there.
That's great to hear. So we're not necessarily expecting that folks who have not had academic relationships, or where those relationships have become less sticky, to try to go and find
right,
just for
the sake of an academic. No.
Good to know. So we have gotten a couple of additional questions around some of the resources or services that MAD students may have access to, and I think this is another reason that we would, or another thing that we would say distinguishes the degree from some of our MOOC offerings, and that is around level of resource and service that MAD students will have access to. So MAD students are University of Michigan School of Information students, and so as such, things like access to career resources and internships, access to University of Michigan services and resources, those things become a part of your MADS experience because you're a University of Michigan student. So when we get questions, for example, about whether or not the MADS students will have access to support resources from the University of Michigan, so things like, what if I needed some help on a specific subset of the curriculum, or what if I was coming to Ann Arbor and wanted to participate in an event. Let's say I live close by, or I was just visiting the campus. Those things are absolutely opportunities that we'll have available. As I indicated before, MAD students will have access to our career development office, just like our residential students. And so if you are interested in getting internships or jobs, which we anticipate you would be, that are related to or are in data scientist roles, those are the kinds of resources that we'll have available for MAD students. Now, another thing that comes up that is relevant is around, well, how do we make sense of that in an instance where someone's living overseas and their time zone is just different, right? So it might be several hours behind or several hours in front of where we are here in Michigan in the United States. So the good news is that all of the content for lectures. All of the lectures are pre-recorded and they're asynchronous. So you don't have to pop on at midnight your time zone in order to participate in MADS courses or curriculum. All of those things will be available to anyone in any time zone that you can access at any time. And that's really the point of offering the degree in this format, is to give people some flexibility. Maybe you want to pop on and look at and read material and do lectures or programming assignments every night. Maybe you don't. Maybe you want to reserve all of that for the weekend, for example. You have the opportunity to do either. Now, that being said, we also will offer synchronous learning opportunities. So, for example, we'll have live office hours with faculty, but at different times of the day throughout a week to accommodate for different time zones. We'll also record those so folks that can't join us live will have the opportunity to watch them. And we will have other folks who are supporting the MADS degree. So in addition to our faculty, we would anticipate having course instructional aids that you may access in video calls or over chat or email, or we will have opportunities for you to work with or even just build community with other MADS students regardless of where they live. So we've been paying a lot of attention to, as you can imagine, and thinking a lot about how do we ensure that everything that is part of this degree is accessible to somebody that lives down the street and equally accessible to someone that lives across the world.
Yeah, and I would say too that as much as we have been thinking about this, we are also so excited to learn from you all about what are the things that are coming up for you, and that we can better adapt and better provide for you all as this pioneering cohort of our online Master of Applied Data Science students.
That's absolutely real and true. So as we navigate talking about the application process and all of its various components, I do want to take the opportunity to reiterate a couple of things because it's come up quite a bit.
Yeah.
So for example, the idea of kind of grades and the significance of GPA comes up.
Okay.
I'm curious if you can address for our folks that are joining us, how do we assess grades, and what happens, if I went to college and got my undergraduate degree and now I've been a working professional for several years? How do you make sense of that compared to somebody, let's say, just graduated?
Yeah, and that's exactly why we have the holistic review process in place, is that because each person is going to come in with a little bit of a different kind of story as it relates to grades and transcript and just academic indicators in general. What I will say is sometimes we've seen successful applicants who might have a GPA lower than our average or lower than our preferred minimum. They might, and let's say if it's from quite a while ago, it's possible that by having demonstrated their abilities and success in perhaps a MOOC space or a continuing education course that you might have taken at a different institution post-undergrad, that could help continue to demonstrate those academic and positive academic indicators for the committee. For someone who has those scores and then is able to, or might have a lower than minimum or lower than preferred GPA, and then is able to describe some context around that, that can be extremely helpful for the committee. And I would say too that because academic indicators are not solely one GPA specific, we oftentimes see folks who, if you are more concerned about your academic transcript or academic work in that space, you could complement that with an academic letter of recommendation. So someone who can speak to your strengths and skills in the academic space. So there's other ways to kind of think more broadly about what academic indicators are outside of just solely a GPA.
That's great. Yeah, because I do think, as you can imagine, that comes up, and it is important again for us to reiterate, what it means to engage in a holistic review process that includes grade point averages, but doesn't necessarily center them so much so that we're not considering other, equally beneficial material as well. So as you can imagine, we do get fair questions about the cost of the degree. And so this is something that we've been working on with the University of Michigan around, how to derive the model for tuition. So right now, anyways, and this is pending Regent's approval, the cost of the 34 credit degree would be about $31,688 for state of Michigan residents and about $42,262 for non-state residents or folks that are not residents of the state of Michigan. Now, there may include some additional fees that have not yet been established, and as I indicated, all of our tuition has to be approved at an institution level by our regents, who do so every year, but more or less that those are about where the tuition rates are falling out. So it's about $932 per credit for state of Michigan residents and about $1,243 for non-residents.
I will say a question that we get often too, especially as it relates to this residency piece, is how is residency determined? So some
question.
it's a little bit clearer, but frankly, oftentimes it can be a little muddy. Yeah. So I can say that we at the School of Information are not the ones who determine the residency. That is at the University of Michigan level. So that is something where you would self-report at the time of your application, and then the University of Michigan Residency Office goes in to determine what your official residency is. And then there are ways where if you feel that they've made an incorrect determination about your residency status, that you can appeal that. All of that is listed on the Registrar's Office for the university's website, and you can see the list of the criteria that you would need to meet to be considered in-state. But that is not something, unfortunately, that we consider or that we are responsible for determining.
Okay, yeah, that's a really important clarification, and I'm glad that you mentioned it, because you're right, that does come up quite a bit, which is how do you make that determination, and what kinds of material can I submit to, demonstrate one versus the other, for example, if it's not clear. So we did talk about at the very beginning of our time together around what we mean when we say April 1st priority deadline, and what sense can we make of that in the context of submission of recommendation letters and TOEFL scores. So if, for example, I'm still waiting on someone and April 1st comes, can I still hit that submit button?
Absolutely.
Can you reiterate for us just how we're considering that priority deadline?
Yes. So there is the portion of your portion, I call it, of the application, which are the transcripts, the resume, the essays, the application itself, and you're able to submit that at any point, and then allow for any of those external components. So I would consider those to be any letter of recommendation that is still lingering out there, any TOEFL score. Those can come in after the fact, and you can manage that real-time receipts using your portal once you've submitted your application. And so from there, we do encourage you to submit your portion by April 1st at 11:59 Eastern Standard Time. We get that question a lot as we come closer.
Totally.
So 11:59 Eastern Standard on Monday, April 1st, to be considered as part of that priority deadline. And then from there, within a week or two, as your application materials, the external ones, are connected to your application, you would still be considered for that priority deadline.
That's excellent. Now, in an instance where we have applicants who want or need to communicate with us, so let's say, for example, they are applying for a fee waiver, or they have an outstanding question, or something's changed, how do they do that, and what is our typical response timeline?
Yes, so our email is the best way. You can also call us, but I feel like email often allows for some more of that in writing clarification and different things that can help you demonstrate. Oftentimes, when it comes to approving a certain fee, we want that for both of us in writing, so that you can say, here is the time and space that you said I had this waiver. So we do like to use our email address, which is, again, umsi.mads, M-A-D-S, at umich.edu. And we work to have within a 48-hour response time, especially we know as it's getting close to the deadline, that we want to make sure that you're getting your questions answered. I would encourage you, if you are expecting to apply by that April 1st deadline and you are wanting to submit paperwork for an application fee, to do that as soon as possible, just because it does take a little bit of a processing time, and we want to make sure you have all of that paperwork and the waiver ready to go by the time you're ready to submit on April 1st.
Very clear, I think, in so much as what we're considering that deadline to be, and really reiterating it here because we want people to hit submit. We really want our folks who are very close to, and again, have all of those components but waiting on that one letter of recommendation or that outstanding TOEFL score to submit their applications and meet our priority deadline. In an instance where someone is coming from an institution outside of the United States and their transcript is in another language, how do you recommend that they proceed? What do we do in that regard?
Yes, so oftentimes institutions can provide an English translated version. I mentioned before that we do not accept WES as it relates to the credentialing or the GPA conversion. However, oftentimes a WES will come as a translated English version. So we can use the translation piece of a WES if you happen to already have that. We know it's an additional cost, which is part of the reason why we don't require it or accept it at all. But if there are ways that you can get us that translated version, that is what we would require. If you are running into some issues with that, just email that umsi.mads@umich.edu, just so that we can be aware of where you're at in getting that to us, so that we can make note in your file that we know it's coming in some way.
So as we get so close to the April 1st priority deadline, a number of our questions, the bulk today, really center on the admissions process. It makes a lot of sense, and I'm glad to see we're getting so many good questions. At the same time, we do still have folks that are also really curious about program components, and this idea of how do I engage with the faculty? How do I feel like I'm a member of the community in the program if accepted? So I will tell you that you will absolutely, as a MAD student, have opportunities to visit faculty in an online space using a live office hours approach where you can interact with them by asking them questions, getting additional clarification, talking about meaningful data science techniques or concepts. So those will be a part of the program that we anticipate offering at a weekly cadence for anyone who is a current MAD student. Relatedly, we would also anticipate that you may have access to course instructional aides or teaching assistants or other folks who are supporting the faculty and supporting the students to ensure that you're learning all of the content and that you have an opportunity to get questions answered or to dig a little bit deeper into our core data science concepts, methods, and techniques. So relatedly, because we are the University of Michigan and a research institution, we're known for that, the question has come up quite a bit about whether or not MAD students will have access to research opportunities. So that's actually something we're still figuring out. We absolutely see the value in that. It's something that we could envision that MAD students may want to do. I don't necessarily think it's an impossibility, but it is different than what it is to work with a faculty in a lab in a residential University of Michigan program. So the short answer is that yes, we're looking into research opportunities for MAD students. We don't yet know exactly what that will look like, but we're certainly sensitive to the fact that there are lots of folks out there, or at least some folks out there, who are interested in participating in research. Makes a lot of sense given the nature of the bulk of research that we do here, or kind of the volume of research that we do here at the University of Michigan. And then relatedly, again, will in fact MAD students have access to career services? So when you're evaluating, for instance, the MADS program, against taking a series of MOOCs or engaging in another kind of program to learn these kinds of skills. What are some of the advantages? One of the advantages we would claim is that you do have access to all of our career development and professional development resources, that the University of Michigan has wonderful opportunities with very well-known employers and not well-known employers, but exciting startups, for example, or or nonprofit organizations or governmental agencies or NGOs, in addition to all of the great relationships that we have with companies like Google and Facebook and Amazon. And so as a University of Michigan student, generally, and specifically as a MAD student, you would have the same access to all of those wonderful opportunities.
Yeah. And I would say, too, just having worked with our career development team, they are well positioned to support. All of our residential students do come from such diverse backgrounds. So whether you're someone who's interested in this from a career advancement perspective, you're wanting to move up in a space where that you already currently are, whether you're wanting to make a pivot or a change, whether you're wanting to start a brand new career, whether you are kind of more close to your undergraduate education, or you've been in the industry for 15 plus years. Our career services team, our career development office here on campus, has worked with students exactly like that all across the spectrum in our residential programs, and so they're perfectly well positioned to support support you as an online Master of Applied Data Science student in whatever sort of direction you're wanting this degree to help you leverage. And so they are very excited to welcome and figure out more from you all what your interests and goals are around career outcomes and which fields and industries or job roles you're looking for.
I think that's a really astute point. And I will say, too, that you are talking to right now 2 University of Michigan alums, and we are part of a vast 535,000 plus network of Michigan alumni. And so when we talk about career and professional development here at the University of Michigan, we're also often talking about the strength of our network and the kinds of folks that you will have access to as a MADS student and ultimately a MADS at University of Michigan alumni, alumnus or alumna, out in the world engaging with lots of other folks who are very eager to say go blue.
Michigan M's everywhere.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. So as we wrap up, the question has come up, when we say April 1st, do we mean March 31st at 11:59 or do we mean April 1st at 11:59?
April 1st at 11:59.
Okay, good.
Yep.
That's a good, important clarification. Yes. So we've got about 2 minutes left.
Great.
As we, this hour has flown by. So as we take our last couple of minutes, can you just tell us again, why University of Michigan School of Information?
Yes. I mean, I think that what we both know is we get excited to talk about this because it really comes from a place where we get to interact with these people day in and day out. So when it's the amazing staff who are here to support all throughout this process, whether that's related to your course and academic areas, your career development interests, your engaged learning, and how you want to participate in the communities and spaces that you are, everywhere from that staff to the students. I work a lot with our students here in the program, and so it's really awesome to see the variety of different excitement and areas that they come from, and then also the huge range of diversity of industries and locations in which they land afterwards is really, really thrilling. And then our faculty, of course. They are exceptional.
Phenomenal.
They are exceptional. Yeah. They are so approachable and accessible, and I'm really excited to have them in this online space and as it relates to a degree. For those of you who are familiar with some of them in the MOOC space, they're very well known in that space as being kind of the people of the MOOC world as it relates to information sciences. So it's exciting to be able to share that and continue to share the amazing faculty work and their teaching strength with an online space.
I could not have said it better. So there were a couple of lingering questions or more specific questions that unfortunately we just didn't either have the time to get to or kind of were at a level of specificity where it likely would require and kind of deserve an individual response. So can you tell us just once more where people can go if they have questions?
Yes. Always feel free to email us at umsi.mads, M-A-D-S, at umich.edu. I think Jeff is writing that into the chat log right now. Always email us. We are humans on the other end. We're here ready to answer your questions, and we look forward to staying connected with you throughout the process.
That's wonderful. So thank you so much for joining us today. We had a great time. We're very eager and looking forward to reviewing your applications. And in the meantime, if you have any additional questions, feel free to reach out to us via email.
Go Blue!